Hello and welcome to episode 170 of Glitch Report. My name is GnittWitt. Thank you so much for stopping by, saying hi, and kicking it with me today on the stream of dreams, the show of shows, and everything in between. You can find everything that I do over at my Linktree, linktree.com/GnittWitt, GnittWitt. I am on Twitch, Threads, TikTok, Blue Sky, Instagram, all of those great things in one convenient location, linktree.com/GnittWitt. There is a lot to talk about on this podcast. There is the aftermath, the fallout of the Game Awards. I have watched episode 1 of the new season of Fallout. We'll talk a little bit about that. There is so much to talk about. Plus, I'm going to be unveiling our Game of the Year, year-end wrap-up plans, and a lot more at the end of this week's episode. So please make sure to stick around through to that. In terms of games that I have been playing, man, it has been I fired up a little bit of a little game called Final Fantasy Tactics last night. I got my first chocobo, and I forgot that when you get one chocobo, it does not take long for you to have, I don't know, a half dozen to a dozen chocobo just showing up in your party, filling up all the space. I also unlocked, I'm on chapter 2 of Final Fantasy Tactics, and I got my first chocobo. I also unlocked the ability to do the errands, which are kind of like the Assassin's Creed send your party off to do things without you type thing, which is great if you're trying to, maybe grind out weaker characters and things like that. But I got a chocobo, and then while I was setting that, doing errands and spending time in the game, I just went back to the party menu, and I'm like, what the fuck? I had one chocobo and now I have like 10. What the hell's going on? So I got a little bit of a chocobo problem going on right now in Final Fantasy Tactics. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. They are housebroken. They are domesticated, maybe a little too domesticated if you ask me, but yeah, that game is still good. And that is a game that will most likely be something that I don't get around to finishing until 2026, but enjoying it. It is a great game, and there'll definitely be more to share when we get to Game of the Year. That I might also be a game where, as I play it, it might move more and more up my list, even if it's an unfinished game. That's, kind of the way I'm going to be rolling to an extent with this Game of the Year, but I will share with you concrete plans for Game of the Year later on in the episode. Breaking news, folks. Kim Kardashian is in Fortnite. Holy shit. Do they have Ray J in Fortnite? Is Ray J in Fortnite? Have they added fucking to Fortnite? Can I make a sex tape in Fortnite? I don't know, but Kim Kardashian is now in Fortnite and features her skin-tight attire with alterable clothes, necklines, and hairstyles. You can also get a Kim Kardashian skin that has a jacket that you can take off and on if that is your thing. Now, here's the thing, though. Fortnite added nipples with the release of Homer Simpson. Fortnite now has nipples for its topless characters, and Kim Kardashian is not topless. And one thing to note is that no matter how tight the uniforms are, you cannot see Kim Kardashian's nipples in Fortnite. I hate to break it to you folks. Fortnite giveth, Fortnite taketh away. That was not meant to be the breaking news, but she's in Fortnite, so I guess fuck it. Oh, sure, why not? I don't know if I have Fortnite installed. That being said, I have not really messed around with Fortnite since the Simpsons event went on. I don't know if this is going to be the thing that gets me back into Fortnite. But Fortnite. I apparently, like, there was like an interview where Kim Kardashian was like, "Oh, like I like playing Fortnite. I'm okay at the game," and that's fantastic. Good for we need more celebrities talking about their favorite video games. And and maybe that's not even her favorite game. Maybe she just plays it casually. Maybe she's more of an Arc Raiders fan. Maybe Kim K heard about the new major update for Warframe and said, I am the Tenno. I don't know where I'm going with this. Where I'm going with this is the Game Awards happened. That happened on Thursday. I sat down and watched it. I was in the Giant Bomb chat live stream watching it and Giant Bomb kind of reacting to the Game Awards and all this stuff. And I'll tell you right now, if you could do something like that, that is probably the way to do it. I had kind of like settled in early for the night. Like I had I had ordered food early because I knew the show was starting at like 4:30 ish. So I'd ordered food pretty early in the evening to get ready for the show. And, as such, I had pretty much committed to that was my plan and I was going to stick with it. I had a friend reach out and I was like, dude, I ate too much chicken and I'm just sitting on this chair, man. And I don't know what to tell you, but I'll tell you right now, if I had, hindsight being 2020, I absolutely would have made, proper plans with friends if they didn't want to get together and watch the Game Awards, because watching the Game Awards like just pro bono raw dogging it by yourself, fucking boring. No offense to the Game Awards, but sitting there watching it by yourself, boring as shit. So that's why I was tuned into the Giant Bomb stream, so watching them react to it. But like I said, if you had friends come by, if you had family members who were interested, that'd probably be more interesting than sitting there watching it by yourself, which I've done in years past. But it's not about, how I watched it. It's about who won and who lost. And the big winner, and we're going to cover the categories. I'll run through everything. But I may not surprise you to know that the big winner for this year's Game Awards ended up being Claire Obscure, which set a new record for awards won, beating out the past winner of The Last of Us Part 2, who had won 7 awards. We'll run through everything. They had broken the record for most Game Awards nominations with 13. Sandfall won 9, beating out Last of Us Part 2's 7. I'm going to run through the awards, man. Let's do it. Kicking things off, starting with a player's voice. Now, one thing to note about player's voice is I'm not going to go through all of the nominees, but when appropriate, I will. Player's voice was Claire Obscure Expedition 33, Dispatch, Genshin Impact, Hollow Knight, Silk Song, and Wuthering Waves. Wuthering Waves and Genshin Impact are free-to-play games, and one of the things that I learned is that you vote for the games, and in the case of Wuthering Waves and Genshin Impact, if you vote for those games, they will give you free in-game items and DLC for voting for them. You can only vote once, but if your account is attached and all of this stuff, you can actually win, in-game currency and items for voting for those games. So, I'm not saying Wuthering Waves didn't deserve it or that Genshin Impact could have had it, but this is a popularity contest in the truest sense, but also one that may be a little rigged and stacked in some people's advantages because you were able to receive in-game currency for the winner, Wuthering Waves. Wuthering Waves winning for player's voice, but partially because you also got in-game currency. Most anticipated game went to Grand Theft Auto 6, to no surprise. Best adaptation went to The Last of Us Season 2, a season of television that I have not heard particularly good things about, whether you are a fan of the show or a fan of the game. It seems like nobody was happy with The Last of Us Season 2, but it won anyways. Best multiplayer game went to Arc Raiders. Best sports/racing game went to Mario Kart World. Best sim/strategy game went to Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles. Best family game went to Donkey Kong Bonanza. I love Donkey Kong Bonanza. I don't know if I'd play it with my family, but I think it's a great game. Best fighting game went to Fatal Fury: City of the Wolves, a game that I have been led to believe is not particularly good. Best RPG went to Claire Obscure Expedition 33. Best action adventure game went to Hollow Knight Silk Song, an award that really should have gone to Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which was nominated. Best action game went to Hades 2. Best debut indie game went to Claire Obscure Expedition 33. Best independent game went to Claire Obscure Expedition 33. Best community support went to Baldur's Gate 3. Best ongoing game went to No Man's Sky. The Games for Impact Award was given to South of Midnight. Innovation in accessibility went to Doom the Dark Ages. Best performance went to Jennifer English for Claire Obscure Expedition 33. Best audio design went to Battlefield 6. Best score and music went to Claire Obscure Expedition 33. Best art direction went to Claire Obscure Expedition 33. Best narrative went to Claire Obscure Expedition 33. I think you know where this is going. Best game direction went to Claire Obscure Expedition 33. And the game of the year, Claire Obscure Expedition 33. So my question is, like, when you hear about these games getting nominated or these games getting awarded, does that pique your interest for them in a way that maybe you hadn't otherwise? Like, if for some reason you were not interested in Expedition 33, if you weren't interested, are you now because of the acclaim that game has gotten? Or do you think it's overrated? Or do you think, whatever, maybe you're a fan of other games, or maybe you just don't care? I'd be curious to know what you think. Let me know. Comments, wherever you can get at me. Now, if I'm being honest, even if I loved Claire Obscure Expedition 33, I don't think the awards part of the Game Awards is particularly amazing. I just don't. I think they don't give people enough time. I think some of the awards categories are fucking silly, especially once you start splitting genres and all of this other stuff. I think they don't give people enough time. I don't think they highlight enough of the teams. I wish there was more behind the scenes work or something just to better provide better context to the efforts and trouble these people went through to make these games. But sadly, no, because they also have to balance it out with advertisement. And the Game Awards is rotten with advertisements in the form of these game reveals, trailers, and things like that. The word going around is that it was about $1 million for a 3-minute trailer at the Game Awards. But that didn't stop companies from making many, many reveals. I have a full list here. I'm not going to cover everything. If you want to see everything that was covered, fucking more power to you. I'm going to talk about games that were revealed. I'll also talk about some games that, showed up again. Anyways, we'll kick things off with what I think was probably the biggest reveal was Star Wars Fate of the Old Republic. It has been announced to be directed by Casey Hudson, formerly of BioWare, the director of the original Knights of the Old Republic. That had a CGI a cinematic trailer. That was one of the game's biggest reveals. The mysterious statue that was showing up in and around the Game Awards was a new Divinity game currently in development at Larian Studios. Coven of the Chickenfoot is a debut game from Uncharted and Last of Us director Bruce Straley's new studio. Capcom has officially revealed that Leon Kennedy will be in Resident Evil Requiem. They showed off a new trailer for Exodus, which is Wizards of the Coast sci-fi action RPG starring Matthew McConaughey. Probably my biggest surprise was Control Resonant. Not because it was a Control game, but because of what Control Resonance looks like. Control, if you never played it, is a third-person shooter with different powers and abilities. You can throw objects and stuff in the environment. Your gun, you have multiple guns, but they all are part of the same gun, so they kind of change from this. And now the thing you're holding is now a shotgun. The thing you're holding is now a SMG or a pistol. All these like kind of supernatural cool abilities. If you've never played it, it's the closest we're going to get to like the X-Files, the video game, but there's also a little bit of X-Files in Alan Wake 2. That's for damn sure. But anyways, that's Control 1. Control Resonant is like a third-person action RPG, like character action game. Like I'm pretty sure I saw like air juggles and stuff in the trailer for Control Resonant. That game looks awesome. I was surprised that that's the direction they're taking Control. I'm all for it. It looks fantastic. Another game that looks fantastic despite being a cinematic trailer was the debut game from Yakuza creator Toshihiro Nagoshi, who has formed a new studio. Nagoshi left, Sega and the team at RGG, left Yakuza, and is making his own new game called Gang of Dragon. And based on the cinematic trailer alone, very, very excited for that game. You play as kind of like a little bit of a I don't want to say like a Samoa Joe type character. He obviously, I know Samoa Joe has been in Yakuza, specifically in Pirate Yakuza. Samoa Joe's in Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. This is not like Samoa Joe's face or his likeness or anything, but that's the best way I could describe this guy. He's like a little bit just a brick shithouse type character. There were also in the trailer the inclusion of guns, which is not something that typically comes up in Yakuza as far as I know, unless it's for like cutscene purposes. So I don't know if you're going to be shooting dudes in this game or not, but if you like Yakuza and you like a Dragon, Gang of Dragon is something you absolutely need to check out. Check out that trailer. It looks really neat. Another thing that surprised me, again, not the biggest surprise, was Tomb Raider, because we're not just getting one Tomb Raider, we're getting two Tomb Raider games. There's a remake called Legacy of Atlantis, which is a remake of the original Tomb Raider game. We are also getting a sequel to that game called Tomb Raider Catalyst. Legacy of Atlantis coming out in 2026. Catalyst coming out in 2027. Catalyst is a brand new original game. We know a lot about 007 First Light, but up until now, we didn't know who the villain was going to be, or at least who one of the villains was going to be. It has been confirmed that singer Lenny Kravitz will play one of the villains in 007 First Light. No Law, the next game from the team at The Ascent, is a cyberpunk first-person shooter developed in Unreal Engine 5. That game looked nice. Curious to check that game out. We don't know a lot. I think it's like a stealth game. I think it is more of a stealth shooter, I believe. PlayStation 5 exclusive Saros has been delayed until April. David Soliani's new game, Bradley the Badger, is a love letter to video games, a mashup of different game genres and ideas. Now that I look at this game from No Law, it looks like you'll be able to do either stealthy or not stealthy. I thought it was just a stealth shooter. Turns out it's not. Another big surprise was Star Wars Galactic Racer from the former Criterion people, people who worked on Criterion, are now working on a new Star Wars racing game. Yes, Sebulba from episode 1 was shown in the trailer. I don't know if it's going to be all pod racing, but it looks pretty fucking neat. And I will say that Star Wars Pod Racer, one of the best Star Wars games ever made as far as I'm concerned. They also showed off a new Mega Man game titled Mega Man Dual Overdrive, which is coming out in 2027. A couple other things to note here. The last big game shown at the Game Awards was a game called High Guard. It is going to be a free-to-play PvP raid shooter. It is from former people who worked on Titanfall and also former talent who worked on Apex Legends. And I thought that game looked like trash. I thought that game looked incredibly bland, boring, and uninspired. I don't know what else to say. They showed off a new trailer for a little game called Diablo 4. Lords of the Hatred expansion is coming out April 28th, 2026. Orbitals, maybe the coolest looking game at the Game Awards. I'm not even trying to fuck with you. The coolest looking game of the Game Awards. There's a game called Orbitals. It is an anime-looking co-op space adventure game coming exclusive to Switch 2. It really has that like 80s, late 70s looking anime to it. Looks gorgeous, looks really neat. They're making a new sequel to The Forest, and by that, sense, a sequel to Sons of the Forest called Forest 3. It had a fucked up, weird trailer. That game looks neat. Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight will be released May 29th, 2026. I'm looking forward to that game. They showed off a cheese is definitely one way to describe it. They showed off a teaser trailer for the Street Fighter movie. They had Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, Jason Momoa, Andrew Scholes, and more on stage at the Game Awards. And at one point, Andrew Scholes is like talking shit about the Mortal Kombat movie. Like, oh, the Mortal Kombat people don't care about you. Otherwise, they would be here. And I'm like, what the fuck? This guy sucks. No wonder he plays Dan in Street Fighter. I don't know if it was 50 Cent. Was 50 Cent there? I don't know if 50 Cent was on stage. The point is that that Street Fighter movie looks fucking stupid as all hell. And that might not be a bad thing, but we're not going to know until it comes out. Wizards of the Coast is also working on a game called Warlock Dungeons and Dragons, which is a dark fantasy action game. What else is there? They showed off the first Bad Robot game, which is a co-op shooter by Left 4 Dead creator Mike Booth called 4 Loop. We now have a date for John Carpenter's Toxic Commando, which will be released on March 12th. And I'm just going to say this. There is not a lot of John Carpenter actually in this. Like, it doesn't look like something John Carpenter would put his name on, though John Carpenter has put his name on some crap in the past. No offense to the GOAT. South of Midnight is coming to PS5 and Switch 2 in the spring. A debut game from the NetEase owned studio, GP Track 50, run by veteran Resident Evil producer Hiroyuki Kobayashi, is a game called Stupid Never Dies. A great name and a really cool looking game as well. Pragmata is coming to Switch 2. A demo is available on Steam now. Guild Wars 2 is getting an expansion. It's out now called Visions of Eternity. Audio Mech, from the creator of Audio Surf, has a demo out December 12th. That is now. And what else? Oh, The Free Shepherd is a really gorgeous looking indie game coming out in 2027, where you play as a sheepdog herding sheep. So, like, overall, like, I think if you watch the Game Awards with other people, or you're part of a stream or something like that, it's not the worst thing in the world. But I think on its own, if you were to watch it seriously the way that like people watch the Oscars or something, I think you're not going to have a great time. I think that the Game Awards continues to be a relatively flat experience, top to bottom. If I'm being real with you. While also on the topic of Star Wars Fate of the Old Republic, the director denies, basically there's been talks of like, well, how far along is this game and things like that. And basically there's some debate over when this game is going to come out. Casey Hudson, like I said, working on the game. I'm getting this from Video Games Chronicle, saying the designer was the director of the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic and the Mass Effect trilogy. But just last year, he was working on an entirely different project before his studio was closed down. Fate of the Old Republic developer Argonaut is yet another startup from Hudson. Confirms that the new game is in early stages of development, which has led to speculation that may not release before the turn of the decade. Hudson, however, has denied that we'll have to wait that long. He wrote on social media, "Don't worry about the not till 2030 rumors. Games will be out before then. I'm not getting any younger." Fate of the Old Republic is described as a single-player, narrative-driven action RPG and a spiritual successor to Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. Hudson co-founded Argonaut this year. He said, "Our goal is developing the kinds of games I love making, emotionally powerful cinematic adventures driven by player agency, narrative depth, and immersive world building." Not to be outdone by everybody else, Bungie has now, kind of put their money where their mouth is when it comes to Marathon. They have confirmed Marathon's release date and confirmed the game is going to have a $40 US starting price. I'm sure you'll be able to pay more money if you want to. So keep that in mind. It is coming out March of 2026 for PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. According to Bungie, Marathon will feature no pay-to-win mechanics, and players will have access to all gameplay updates, which includes maps and runner shells, events, etc., with an additional reward pass that won't expire. The reward pass, I imagine, is their word for battle pass, which other games have done in the past. Halo Infinite has non-expiring battle passes. I believe Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League also has non-expiring battle passes. You can switch between them as you want. Marathon was originally planned for release in September, but Bungie announced in June that it had officially delayed the game, citing a need for more time and refinements and testing. The delay followed mixed feedback from players to alpha tests and a significant controversy around stolen artwork that was found in those test builds. They now have been talking about improvements to the game. Those improvements include proximity chat, a new solo experience and queue, and updates to the game's visual fidelity, which are detailed in a new video if you would like to watch it. Whether you were with us back in April for our first alpha or you're joining us now, there's a rich world full of lore and loot for you to discover when your cybernetic biosynthetic shell. Remember when humans were humans, man? No, I'm joking. When your cybernetic biosynthetic shell takes its first step into our new world. God forbid they not have an overly wordy way to describe, I don't know, you're like a living robot. I don't know. These dang living robots taking our jobs, taking our loot. I don't know too much about what the solo experience is going to be for this game. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm just not updated on the state of things. That being said, if it is a true solo experience where I can say fuck you to everyone who wants to play the game with me and play it by myself, that's better than nothing. But I just don't know what the state of the solo experience is going to be like, because there are games like Call of Duty Black Ops 7 where you could play the entirety of the end game extraction mode by yourself. You will still see players running around the environment. You'll still see players joining you and helping you fight enemies and complete objectives, but there is no worry about people running up and killing you, like in the case of something, like Hunt Showdown or Arc Raiders. It's a quick news story. Brian Fleming, co-founder of Ghost of Yote Studio Sucker Punch, is leaving the studio, which makes sense considering he just helped get a game out the door. Starting January 1st, longtime creative and technical leaders Jason Connell and Adrian Bentley will step into new roles as studio heads, Sony Interactive announced on Tuesday. But this is with Brian Fleming leaving. Jason served as co-director on the Ghost franchise, and Adrian, as technical director, led the studio's engineering and production efforts. Sucker Punch has been a PlayStation first-party studio since 2011 and is known for the Sly Cooper, Infamous, and Ghost of Tsushima games. Can I just say right now that I love Sly Cooper? Whoo, do I love Sly Cooper? Sly Cooper 2? Oh my god. Sly Cooper 3 is pretty good too. I never played that last Sly Cooper game, Thieves in Time or whatever, the PS3 one, but I wish Brian Fleming, the best. I do. And I just want to say that I love the Sly Cooper games, and I'm very much looking forward to playing Ghost of Yote when it comes to PC. Silksong is getting a free DLC expansion, and a Switch 2 version of Hollow Knight, the original game, is in development. Silksong's Sea of Sorrow expansion will be released next year. The Switch 2 version of Hollow Knight is said to feature high frame rate modes, higher resolutions, and many additional graphical effects, much like the difference between the Switch and Switch 2 version of Silksong. The update for Hollow Knight will be available on Switch 2 for free when it comes out next year. To prepare for the release of the Switch 2 version of Hollow Knight, Team Cherry is updating all existing versions of the first game adding new features and fixing some bugs. Some of those changes have already been rolled out on the Steam version, including support for 21:9 and 16:10 resolutions, with a full list of tweaks listed on the game's Steam page. Finally, Team Cherry revealed that 7 million people have bought Hollow Knight Silksong in 3 months since its release, not counting the millions more who have been playing the game on Xbox Game Pass. They put out a little message here saying, "We wanted to say thank you to all the players who've braved Silksong's distant and dangerous lands. That's over 7 million of you who purchased the game alongside millions more playing on Xbox Game Pass. Truly, it's a staggering number of players, more than we could have ever expected, enough to crash all the storefronts. Watching the community grow, seeing the amazing art, the mods, the unexpected strategies, and the support between players through their games' challenges has been hugely rewarding for us here at home. Your continued enthusiasm remains a massive motivator as we work toward expanding the game even further." We got some games in development. A little game called Dead Island 3 is in development and is targeting a 2028 release date. Development of the game is moving at pace. That's according to financial documents spotted by a user on Twitter. The documents outright name the game and the state of the production. According to docs, parts of the game are now in early production, including feature design, character design, world design, and narrative. The current predicted release window for the project is Q1 2028. Dambusters teased the existence of Dead Island 3 via a Steam post earlier this year. Dambusters are already carving out what comes next. For now, the details stay under wraps. The outbreak is far from over. If Dead Island 3 releases in 2028, it will arrive 5 years after the last game, which had a turbulent development period stretching nearly a decade. So my understanding is the folks at Deep Silver and Dambuster probably want to strike while the iron is hot as best as possible, in order to keep Dead Island fresh in people's minds. First announced in 2014, the zombie action RPG suffered a series of delays and changes of developer during an eventful production cycle. Dambuster, the internal Deep Silver studio, took over development in 2019, and the game was finally released in April of 2023 on PS5, PS4, Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, PC via the Epic Game Store. I played a little bit of it. I don't know. It was okay. I think I'm just more of a Dying Light 1 guy. Like, I think that zombie action RPG experience to me basically stops and starts with Dying Light, but you know, I could always give those games another chance. With only a few days left until the end of the year, you might have guessed it, but Nacon has confirmed that its Terminator game, Terminator Survivors, will not be releasing in 2025, basically because they ran out of room to put out the game this year. They've also made some changes to the game. Terminator Survivors will no longer launch in early access, and it is ditching co-op. So here's what you need to know about this game. Is that Terminator I'm going to pull it up here because I believe it's on Steam. Why am I typing Steam into Steam? So I believe that Terminator Survivors is an open world first person shooter action game with stealth and things like that. There's not a lot to go off of because they basically said we're pulling a lot of the things that we had announced for the game, but it is an open world set in the post-apocalyptic future. So I'm guessing after D-Day, things like that. Not a whole lot else to go off of at the moment, though, I must say. It's open world, it's single player, it's an action. You know, it's like a Far Cry probably without the co-op stuff that they're taking out. Some people are taking stuff out of the game, some people are putting stuff into the games. Tencent is investing in the hyper-real body cam shooter that became an internet sensation. We're talking about a game called On Record, which has entered full production and it's has expanded its development team. The French indie studio published a 2-minute trailer for Unrecord in 2023. It quickly became an internet sensation, amassing around 40 million views in less than 20 hours. The game's photorealistic visuals, which depict a police officer engaging in a shootout with criminals, has sparked debate on whether the footage was real gameplay, and if so, what considerations should be given for its subject matter. For the record, I have no comments on what considerations should be given to its subject matter, mostly because the way the game looks is really cool, so I'm going to put aside however I may feel about the subject matter and just say, oh, this game looks pretty fucking cool. I'll take it. The studio says it's now entered full production and is committed to delivering a single-player FPS defined by hyper-realism, immersive gameplay, and engaging storytelling. Players can expect updates on the project next year. They have also put out new images of the game and things like that. Do they have a new trailer out as well? I'm just checking that. Do they have a new trailer? No, the trailer they still have is the one that's up right now. It's a cool looking game if you're interested in like a hyper realistic shooter that's trying to simulate looking through not the eyes of the officer, but the body camera attached to the person. Listen. So the reason why I really don't have anything to say about like this, like on paper, yes, I can see some people being like, body cam footage of police officers makes them feel a certain way. I think I'm a little bit more at peace with the subject matter in games these days after coming off of Horses, because even when a game has like some sort of sensitive subject matter, sometimes I don't end up feeling almost any way at all about it, or just like, whatever, it's fine. And when I look at Unrecord, I say to myself, whatever, it looks fine. So I can, if you're sensitive, don't play this game. Don't look at the trailers. If you think what the idea of a realistic first person shooter is upsetting, I don't know what to tell you. I think this game looks pretty fucking neat. And hopefully it is a real video game, which is my big question after all this time. Katamari creator Keita Takahashi has been struggling lately. He's had his ups, he's had his downs, and it seems like he's had more downs than ups, because he has admitted to people saying, I wish I had the Katamari IP. He left Bandai Namco and ended up in 2010 and ended up working in San Francisco producing some of his own games. Those games he's created have not necessarily hit, unfortunately. Disappointing sales. He is leaving San Francisco, moving back to Japan. My thought is that Keita Takahashi is just trying to make some money, and I don't blame him after having games that have not sold particularly well, that you kind of maybe put a lot more money and effort into as the creators. I get it. Here's the story though. Takahashi designed the original Katamari Damacy game and its sequel at Bandai Namco in the early 2000s. He left in 2010 and founded a company called Uvula with his wife, moving to San Francisco and working with Annapurna on Wadum, and which came out. Wadum came out in 2019, and To a T, which came out in 2025. Speaking in a new interview with Games Radar, Takahashi has claimed that To a T didn't sell well, to the extent he decided to move back to Japan with his family after more than a decade in the US. The designer also suggested that his future working in games isn't certain, but said he'd be interested in working on the Katamari series again if allowed to do so. He says, I don't think anyone tries to make a niche game when asked about the amount of attention his games have historically received, saying the title niche game is just a result. I know my games are far from mainstream. And that's why we love Keita Takahashi. Like, when we think about big games from Bandai Namco, you might eventually get around to saying something like Katamari Damacy, but it's so beautiful and weird in itself that, like, You wouldn't want it to be mainstream. I wouldn't want Keita Takahashi to be like, okay, it's a third-person cover-based shooter. It's a fantasy action RPG. It's a whatever. Like, I want him to be weird, man. And if he has weird ideas for Katamari, more power to him. He goes on to say, I recently returned to Japan, and one of the reasons I had to do so was because 2T didn't sell well. This is a risk of being independent, and I'm willing to take it, but I don't think it's a question of niche or traditional. It's a question of whether people like it or not. I believe there is still room for new ideas, and unfortunately 2T just wasn't a good fit. But I think the situation is what it is. Takahashi said that he felt it was definitely getting harder for him to make experimental games that he's known for. My next goal is to support my children and find them a school in Japan. Then if I feel that I don't belong in the games industry, I'll have to look elsewhere. Asked about the legacy of Katamari, the series he's best known for, Takahashi said that he still had ideas for future games in the series. He said, I wish I had the Katamari Damacy IP. Anyway, I'm glad that the game and the characters are still loved today. In many ways, I have some interesting ideas for Katamari Damacy that only I could come up with. If I have the opportunity to work with Bandai Namco again, it would be a very interesting project. I wish Keita Takahashi the best. Very curious to see what he does, whether making another independent game in Japan or eventually coming back to Bandai Namco. Not to be outdone by Kim Kardashian, South Park is reportedly coming to Fortnite soon and may have its own mini event pass. That is a shorter battle pass that is around for a slightly shorter period of time. I will be very curious to see when that all happens. Hasn't happened yet. Our final news story is a story about Forza Motorsport. And you know what's funny? I was just messaging a friend the other day and I said, give me the three, and it was maybe kind of a tricky question. And I don't mean to be such a smart ass when I ask these questions, but I was like, what are the three worst games put out by Microsoft owned studios? And the three games that came to my mind were Redfall, Call of Duty Black Ops 7, and Starfield. I said those I think are the three worst games put out by a Microsoft owned studio in recent memory. However, if there was a fourth game to be added to that list, I would say it's Forza Motorsport. It's been confirmed that Forza Motorsport will receive no more new content. Turn 10 has confirmed. Half the studio was laid off in the summer, putting out a statement saying, thank you all for your support through 2025. It's incredible to see the community's passion for Forza Motorsport, and we love racing with you in featured multiplayer and seeing your cars and drifting skills in meetups. As our team shifts its focus towards delivering the best possible experience with Forza Horizon in 2026, we do not plan to introduce new cars, tracks, features, or regular bug fixes for Forza Motorsport. However, we will continue supporting the game by keeping servers online and active, hosting special events and competitions, and reintroducing previously released feature tours and reward cars on a monthly basis until all content is available for you to enjoy anytime. We hope you continue racing with us in Forza Motorsport in 2026. See you at the track. Now for context, Forza Motorsport, the 8th Forza Motorsport game, was released in 2023 and served as the reboot of the series. The game has since received 22 free updates, many of which included new tracks, vehicles, and other improvements. However, following the news in July that Turn 10 had suffered numerous layoffs as part of Microsoft's cuts, former employee Fred Russell claimed on his Facebook page that Turn 10 had shuttered the Forza Motorsport space and that the team is no more, suggesting it was now acting as a support studio for Forza Horizon. Someone then asked Phil Spencer about Forza Motorsport, which seems like such a waste of time, but here we are. This was in October when CEO Phil Spencer was asked if Forza Motorsport series had come to an end. Spencer replied that it hadn't, but that stressed that it wasn't ready for a return anytime soon because Xbox is more focused on titles that are closer to release. He goes on to say, regarding Forza Motorsport, sometimes we need to shift focus to games that need to ship sooner. We understand the reaction many had when we scaled back Turn 10 Studios. We have many games we want to support with care, and sometimes we give development teams more time to avoid putting them under constant strain. Our current structure with multiple studios allows for this flexibility. So my question is, okay, so we know that Turn 10 is working with Playground Games on Forza Horizon 6. We also know that Playground Games is working on Fable. My question is, do you think there is a single soul at Turn 10 who is working on something that will eventually be Forza Motorsport 2 or whatever they end up calling it? How dead is Forza Motorsport? Because that game dropped the ball, poorly optimized. It ran like shit. It looked decent at times. It looked really good in some spots and really bad in others. But unfortunately, things like the optimization just got in the way. People didn't care for its attempts at a car RPG with leveling up your car and all that shit. So my question is, like, where do they go from here? Where do they go from here? And do you think there is actually anyone working on a game called Forza Motorsport? We are going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the games that I have been playing, some other announcements, and plans for Game of the Year. Stick around. We will be right back. Welcome back to the podcast. I continue to be GnittWitt, and we continue this podcast episode. So, like I mentioned, I've been playing Final Fantasy Tactics a little bit. I am still on Chapter 2. My plan is to put more time and effort into that game, especially into the new year. Though, I should probably mention right now, we are not doing a podcast next week. Next week is Christmas Eve. I will not be doing a podcast on Christmas Eve, which means that I'm going to have plenty of time to play as much of that game as I can for Game of the Year, year-end wrap-up conversations. I've been playing a lot of Dragon Age of Veilguard. I've been doing more side content in Dragon Age of Veilguard than I did when I first started the game. And I am pleasantly surprised how much I'm enjoying that game. I think by approaching that game for what it is, not what I expected it to be, not what I wanted it to be, I've been enjoying it a lot more. There's actually a friend of mine, I was like, I'd really like to know what, you think of this game. He has not had time and he's playing other games like Final Fantasy Tactics and other things, which is awesome. But yeah, there's something about, like, this is probably going to be BioWare's last game, right? This is probably going to be the last Dragon Age game. I don't know if that Mass Effect game is going to come out under EA and, Saudi Arabia ownership and stuff like that. And that's not me, picking on new owners necessarily. It's just, I think at some point they're going to start selling that shit for parts if they don't get the return on investments that they were expecting, up to and including stuff like Dragon Age, stuff like Mass Effect, and maybe BioWare as a whole. Though, why would you sell BioWare if you're not selling the IP? You tell me. The thing I was going to talk about was Game of the Year. So in the last couple of years, we have done awards, like worst game and Game of the Year and a top 5 or a top 10 list or stuff like that. We're not going to do any of that stuff this year. We're not. What I want to do is, I think, focus more on the games and less on the awards and things and like nominations and categories to be given to those games. So here's what the plan is for the year-end episode of the podcast. We're going to do it live Wednesday, the 31st on New Year's Eve. That podcast will be up as soon as possible on that day, for those who want to listen to the video version and the audio version. But we're not going to do the same typical awards. What we're going to do is, I'm going to be building. I haven't even started doing. I've kind of started doing this, so I'm not even there yet. But what I'm going to do is, I'm going to build a list of notable games that I played this year that are 2025 games. I might even include a small list of notable games from past years that I played this year. And I'm going to talk about those 2025 games in order from my least favorite to my most favorite, right? Some of these games I finished, some of these games I haven't finished, but I want to give these games their due for good or for bad. So instead of being like, oh, such and such, here are the 5 games that are the worst games of the year, let's just kind of go through them in order of how I feel. It's going to be more of an art than a science this year when it comes to determining what the best games are. At the end of that episode, you will basically know what my favorite game of the year was, because the last game on that list will be the best game that I played this year. After that list has wrapped up, I will also include some 2026 most anticipated games that I'm looking forward to. I'll do a list on those as well. And then we will wrap things up with some other final words, comments, and things like that. I'm going to say right up at the top right now, I want to share an announcement with you before we wrap up this podcast and before we do the Game of the Year podcast. Hard to say, but the next podcast that we do, the Game of the Year year-end wrap-up podcast that you're going to hear in 2 weeks' time on the 31st, that episode of the podcast will be the last episode of the Glitch Report podcast for the foreseeable future. After Game of the Year is over, I'm going to be putting the Glitch Report podcast on hiatus for, I would say, a minimum 6 to 12 months. We'll see what happens. In my head, like in my heart, I'm like, oh, we can get back to it in like 6 months. In my head, I'm like, it might be 12 months or longer. So I'm just saying that the next podcast episode will be the last podcast episode of Glitch Report for the foreseeable future. We will talk all things 2025 games. We'll talk all things 2026 anticipated games. I will also share more details, and because I think it's only fair, I will be as brutally honest and transparent and upfront about why this podcast is going on hiatus as well. So if you do have questions, comments, concerns, you can reach out to me, GnittWitt@gmail.com. You can also get in touch with me on social media, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, Threads, whatever. You could find me, get in touch. If you do have any questions, comments, concerns, burning questions, comments, concerns, whether it be about the future of the podcast or the future of my games content or any other questions you like, just like this, we'll just open it up. If you have questions, if you have questions, I will answer them. They don't even have to be related to the future of the podcast necessarily, but I will go into more detail about why this podcast is wrapping up again for the foreseeable future is probably the best way to describe it. I will say this right now. I want to continue doing the podcast. I am just not able, I guess is probably like able is maybe not the right word. I need to go. It's almost like, oh, I need to return to my home planet and maybe I'll come back sooner. That's kind of how I'm feeling right now about the podcast. I need to go do other things and make other gaming content before I can come back and do this podcast in a way that I think does the audience, a service and provide something of value. So I'm not saying this podcast is bad or that it doesn't provide value, but I want to make this podcast the best that it can be. I just don't have what I need to do that. And it will probably take me quite a while to get to that. But the whole goal is to get back to doing this podcast in some way, shape, or form in the future. But for the foreseeable future, this was the last normal episode of the Glitch Report podcast, maybe a little bit of a shorter one. I guarantee you, based on the list of games that I have and the way I ramble about games and talk about games, there will probably be too much podcast when we do the Game of the Year podcast in 2 weeks' time. So, the episodes of the podcast are staying up. If you wanted to listen to old episodes of the podcast, you totally can. But I will mention that I'm going to continue to be making content in the form of short form videos, let's plays, and things like that. Best way to find that stuff is going to be over at the YouTube channel. So check out GnittWitt on the YouTubes if you want to stay up to date on that stuff. The video version of the podcast is staying up. Like, nothing's going away. It's just that this will be discontinued for the foreseeable future. Basically starting once it hits 2026, this podcast ain't happening anymore. So thank you so much for joining me and listening and supporting the show. Your questions, comments, concerns, your feedback, your engagement, your attention, all of that stuff. I do really appreciate it. And the plan is to come back and do this podcast in some way, shape, or form in the future. But for now, I need to focus on other content. And I'm going to give a better explanation for why and how I came to this at the end of the game. So, like, I will answer as many questions as I can. I have answers that I want to give that I'm just not ready to give right now. I will provide all those details at the end. The final end, the end. This isn't like Spinal Tap 2 where the end continues. Like, the end is coming. And the end will be here on Wednesday, December 31st. That is going to do it for this episode of the Glitch Report podcast. I've been GnittWitt. You can find everything that I do over at my Linktree, linktree.com/GnittWitt, GnittWitt. I am on Twitch. I am on Threads, TikTok, Blue Sky, Instagram, all those great things. Linktree.com/GnittWitt. We'll see you all in 2 weeks' time for the year-end wrap-up and for the final episode of Glitch Report. We'll see you then. Take it easy.